Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it The Difference Between Creation and Projection. And it's based on a question somebody asked me, and the question reads, "Hi Nick, I watch your videos daily, and I'm grateful for this way of seeing that you share. My question is, am I the creator from my true being of everything that appears in the projection? Is the life that lives me, myself, creating the projected scenes? Does the entire projection that I project, images, sounds, sensation, etc., speak of my thoughts? For example, if I see a sad person or my sad character, is it my thought of sadness that creates that scene? Because I also give the scene meaning of a sad person. Then it's my thought overlapping the scene, even if I don't feel sadness when observing the scene? Thank you." Okay, I'm going to share with you what I wrote briefly, and then we'll elaborate, because I even said that I was going to make a video elaborated on his question. And I wrote, "You are the creator," and by the way, creator I mean capital C, capital letter, creator, okay? So I says, "You are the creator and everything you create is true. What happened is that we don't want to confuse creation with projection. The world of appearances is not part of creation. It's a projection within what is true, within the creation. I'll talk about it in a minute. What projects this world is not the creator, but what is known as the ego, or a thought of separation. Your question therefore begins to subtly distract you from what is true, and now you give me examples within the world of appearances that have nothing to do with what is true, that has nothing to do with creation, capital C. So, since you have few questions, one after another one, what I'm going to do is make a video to answer them one by one. Okay, let's just talk a little bit about creation and projection, and what I mean by what is true. When you're dreaming, when you're sleeping, just for the sake of this example, you in bed is what is true. Got it? So your mind in bed, it is what is true. And everything that relates to what is true is part of what you would say creation. Now, when you project a dream, when the mind that is in the bed projects a dream, the dream has nothing to do with creation. It's a projection. And everything that happens in the dream has nothing to do with what's true. It's just a projection. And we don't want to confuse projection with creation. We don't want to confuse the false, whatever is happening in the dream, with what is true. And that's what I said over here, that the projection seems to be projected in what is true, meaning that the mind is the only thing that is true, and the images in it are a projection within what is true, but they are not creation, they are not true, they're just simply projections in the mind. So we don't want to confuse one with the other one. So, having said that, let's look at some of the other questions the person had. He says, "My question is, am I the creator from my true being of everything that appears in the projection?" Once again, everything that appears in the projection is a projection, has nothing to do with truth. So you're not being the creator of that, even though the whole projection seems to appear within you. Okay, continue. "Is the life that lives me, myself, creating the projected scene?" Well, the life that you are, it simply is, and it's pointing to the fact that you simply are. The projected scenes seems to be happening within the life that you are, but they're not projected by the life that you are. And this is when it gets tricky here, okay? Because if you look at teachings like A Course in Miracles, they suggest that the life that you are, which is God, is what is, and the projections come from a thought within that life that projects the dream, also known as ego. If you look at the Advaita Vedanta, for example, they would suggest that consciousness is what it calls it, or life is, and the projection has to be a part, not a part of, but has to come from the source, which would be life. That's why we don't want to get caught up in technicalities like that, because that is still a distraction. The bottom line is that it depends from which approach you approach this question. You see? So the life that lives you, it's simply what is, and we're pointing to what is, the self, and that's it. Don't let the projection distract you from the life that you are. So this question, we have to address it very carefully because of that. It could be very confusing to the point that some say, yeah, but I mean, if life is all that there is, then everything is a projection of life. But then there's another approach, which life is all that there is. This never existed, never happened, and what it seems as though it's projecting this is a thought in what life seems to be. That's why I just address this particular part of the question, but don't get caught up too much into that. Let's look at the simplicity of this. All of this is a projection from whatever the source is. Whether you want to choose it from the ego or whether you want to choose it from life itself, it doesn't matter. The important is that it's not true. Okay? Then continues. For example, if I see a sad person or my sad character, right? Is it my thought of sadness that creates the scene? Well, again, it's a tricky question here, because if you say, if I see a sad person, the first question that I would ask you is, who is the one that is seeing or claim that is seeing a sad person? You see, that's where we have to go to. Yes, scenes will come, and yes, you will see all sorts of sceneries. And sad person is a label that is placed upon a projection that seems to be seen. Your thoughts are not creating that or projecting that, because you yourself, you are a thought in that which seems to project all this. You see? So it's not my thoughts that are creating or projecting a sad person. All I know is that I am, and that's it. And if we leave it there, all these questions will drop by the wayside. And in the I amness, there's appearance of this seeming I, and there's appearance of the seeming others. And then all those others are just images in all that there is, and I may find myself seeing those things, which I don't see anything. It's life through me anyway. And whatever label we place on them, sad character, whatever, is just simply a label that is placed on that image. A dog will look at a person and it doesn't say it's a sad person or it's a happy person. It simply look at image. A baby looks at an image, and the baby doesn't see that it's a sad image or a happy image. The baby simply is, babying. You know what I'm saying? Let's see, continues. Because I also give the scene meaning of a sad person. Then it's my thought overlapping the scene, even if I don't feel sadness when observing that. Yeah, the thought is always overlapping the scene. And this is something that we're actually talking about in these videos all the time. If you don't believe the content of the mind, the thoughts are not overlapping the scene, and consequently you don't experience the consequence of your own thought. You see? So right now, to keep it very simple and not make it complicated, life is, images seems to appear, sensation seems to be felt, sounds seems to be heard. It's all that is, that's it. but you are. You remain as you are. And if you don't let the thoughts interpret or evaluate, they will be interpreting and evaluating for practical reasons, but for psychological reasons, if you don't let the thoughts get in the way of the recognition that you are, you function in the world the way everybody does, but you're not believing the content of the mind. Therefore, you don't find yourself suffering any experience. You simply find yourself dealing with life as it unfolds. And that is what is referred to as living in the world that is not of it. You see? It's very simple. But the reason why this seems to be very complicated is because we're trying to trap this from the perspective of the individual. And what we're saying here is that there's no such thing as an individual. That's where Advaita is pointing to. That's where A Course in Miracles is pointing. Even the Bible is pointing to. Every single teaching that points to truth always reminds you that who you are or what you are is that which word cannot describe. And this is where the videos are pointing to. So in regard to this question, it's very simple. If you see whatever image, then a thought may seem to overlap by projecting a meaning to any of those images. Well, we're withdrawing the meaning, but remember, this is not the person that is doing this. This is what we're trying to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. You're not going to disappear as a person within the world of illusion, but you'll be able to live in the world with a different mindset. In other words, when you recognize that if you don't believe the content of the mind, then you're not at the mercy, so to speak, for the meanings that that the mind is using to try to give to any scenario, whatever the scenario may be, and you experience what is referred to as the peace that passes all understanding. This is the practicality of these videos until the time comes for you to let go of this body. And you see how time is used right now here, until the time comes. But again, you don't have to be concerned about that. Let's go to the practicality of this right now. If you don't believe the content of the mind, I don't say the thoughts will not be there. They will be there, that's fine. If you don't believe them, what remains? Don't answer the question. If you answer the question, you went back to the mind. I'm not talking to you, I'm just pointing to the obvious. And the obvious is that right now, no matter what seems to be happening in your life, no matter what seems to be happening, whatever, thoughts, sensations, feelings, circumstances, the mind is trying to make sense of any of that in regards to whether it benefits me or it may not. So again, if you don't believe the content of the mind, if you don't believe your thoughts right now, just don't believe them. Let them be there, that's fine. Remember, it's not you that is not believing them. I'm just pointing to simply the fact of not believing the thoughts. What remains? Let's do it with me right now for a moment. It may last few seconds because the mind is so used to get involved and believe the content of the mind. And remember, these videos are paradoxical, because if I tell you not believe the content of the mind, it's not even you who choose to do that. It's life through this instrument that seems to be doing that. So life is telling itself, don't believe the content of the mind, that's all. So as these words are being heard, if in your journey you're supposed to not believe, then it appears as if you're listening to me, but in reality we're pointing to what is. So right now the mind that is supposedly dreaming the dream is talking to itself, okay? So right now, act as if you cannot believe the content of the mind, even for a little bit. Doesn't matter. Like Ramesh Balsekar used to say, act as if you have freedom of choice when you know that you don't, okay? So right now, just for a moment, you don't need to close your eyes. I don't want you to make this into anything special. I'm simply pointing to what is right now, looking at me. Don't believe the content of the mind. Just don't believe it for a moment. You see what is left? What is left is what is always. Always. No matter what. No matter if you see a person that mind wants to label it sad or happy. or call himself sad or happy, or doesn't matter. Right now, just don't believe the content of the mind and notice what remains. You see, the problem is that word notice what remains, it assumes that there's a noticer. You see, I'm trying to do my best with the limitation of language. I hope you understand where this is pointing to. Right now, just don't believe the content of the mind. It doesn't mean you're hiding from the world, doesn't mean that you will disappear, it doesn't mean that you will not know how to take your children to school, it doesn't mean you'll forget to go to work. No, you'll continue living your normal life, but with a different mentality, and this is part of the training, if you want to use that word, okay? So right now, if you don't believe the content of the mind, what remains? Do you see? This is it. This is where this is all pointing to. That's it. Nothing else. And how do you carry this attitude to work? The same thing. You still do your job. You do everything. But when the mind trying to translate in order for you to worry, concern, or what could happen, those translations, you don't believe them while you're doing your work. You know? Meaning that if your boss says, if you don't do this by Friday, you're going to be fired. Well, you simply say, okay, he said that, or she said that if I don't do this by Friday, I will be fired. You don't let the thoughts get in the way. But if you get fired, what's going to happen? And the future, no, you're still present. And what do you do? Okay, right now, this is the job that I have at hand. I'll do the job the best that I can, not because I'm worried about getting fired. You see, these are the thoughts I'm talking about, not believing any of that. And Friday is not here, so Friday doesn't exist. It's a concept of the mind. You see, you're still doing whatever you do, and one of two things may happen: that Friday comes along, you get the job done and you still keep the job, or Friday comes along, the job is not finished and you may get fired, or the boss just simply said that to try to scare you, and you never got scared. The boss may not know that, but you was never scared, and the boss said, okay, well, that's fine, you're doing a good job, but please try to finish it by Monday. You see, it doesn't matter. But you see, this is the psychological thoughts that will not get in the way anymore. You send your kids to school and the mind goes, oh my God, what could happen to them? What if they get hurt? You see, all that thinking that all that thoughts won't affect you at all, because you know that you know who you are, you know that life is, and life is the one that is living the kids as well. And the kids, if something is supposed to happen, you know that has nothing to do with anything you have done. It has to do with that is the script, that is what's supposed to happen. You see? You still being a loving parent who will take care of it and do the things that you need to do, but not with the psychological fear of, man, I'm doing this because what if something happened to them? You do it because love is leading you to do that. That's what love would do. If you don't believe the content of the mind, you don't believe the stories and everything, then you just see how life is unfolding. But you are not distracted by any of it. You see, that's when the language is getting very tricky here. So let's go back to the simplicity. If you don't believe the content of the mind, what remains? You see? What remains? And there's no answer to this. There's no words. I'm not looking for words. This is the silence that every single teaching points to. Every single teaching that points to truth always leads to silence, because words are distractions. Everything that is perceived seems to be a distraction, because the mind gets in the way and tries to make sense of all of it. No, trust that you will know how to do and what to do in the daily living, but you're living with a different mentality, you see, and this is what we're resting in. This is all. This whole video is about this. The message is not going to change. The message is going to be the same. See, don't believe the content of the mind as what is left. Well, this is all there is to do, and that's it. Life will unfold as it will. I don't know what life is going to do with this character. I don't know what am I going to do today. It seems that there's some things that I think I'm going to be doing. One of them would be finishing this video and then edit it and uploading it to YouTube. But again, you see, it's just life's just happening. If I had an appointment or something, I'm pretty sure that would be written in the agenda, and that would be something that may seem to be in the agenda, but the appointment will not happen until I am actually in the appointment. Well, nothing is going to happen until it's happening. But right now, what seems to be happening, remember, seems to be happening within the world of projections, is this. You see? And this has nothing to do with creation. Creation is truth. Creation is. You see? This is all projection. And that's it. End of story. I don't want to keep talking because we're just running in circles. So anyway, I hope this somehow served. If it did, well, I'm glad. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.